Hey, let's talk about planning. You know, a lot of people think that I've got it right here, I don't have to write it down. If you fall under that notion that I got it, you know, I know what I'm supposed to do, don't feel the need to write it down. Whether it's paper or digital, I'm not talking about that. You have a paper planner or a digital planner, whatever works best for you. The principle is, though, by writing down, or typing in, I guess, your plan or your goals, you are 60 to 80% more likely to achieve them. 60 to 80%. Now, number one, my point would be, why go against those kinds of odds? Why trust your brain to go against those kinds of odds? If you're that much more likely to achieve your goals, why not go with it? I mean, that alone should be enough of a motivation for all of us to say, okay, you know, 60 to 80% more likely. Yeah, I guess I should probably give myself the biggest possible benefit or bang for my buck, or the best odds for success. All I need to know is that it's much more likely. Good enough for me. But some people, that's not good enough for. So if that's not good enough for you, I submit a second reason why you should write down your plans and your goals, your to-do lists, what it is that you're doing. Write stuff down. And that is because your brain is a factory, not a warehouse. All right, let me unpack that for you. So when you get ideas, when you're exposed to messages, when marketers are reaching out to you constantly, when you've got emails and social media, and you've got people that need to respond back to you, you've got meetings, and you've got events to plan for, and that pitch coming up, and a sales presentation, and a follow-up phone call, and then a meeting with your boss, and then you've got to maybe give some accountability meetings to people in your group, or you've got to do a discipline, meeting with somebody. I don't know. There's so much going on that our brains get inundated with stuff. Just stuff. Our brains start suffocating. It's a word I came up with that I love. Everybody seems to be suffocating because there's so much stuff. And I'm talking specifically about mental baggage. And what that leads to is overwhelm. Because when you get so much stuff in your brain, you're afraid that I'm not going to be able to remember much more. My brain is so full. There's so many things I have to remember. And what writing down your stuff does is it relieves pressure off of your brain. It's kind of like, gosh, this is a gross example, but man, I used to milk goats when I was a kid, and our goats would get into the grain sometimes, and they don't have a stopping mechanism. They just eat, and if they keep eating, they'll bloat and die. They don't know when's enough, and I think I'm that way sometimes. If dinner's really good, I'm like, oh, gotta have one more serving or whatever. But anyways, goats are like that. And so I would have to go in anytime they would get into the barn, get into the grain, run in there as fast as we could and get them out, because they'll just keep eating that grain. Grain goes in their stomach and swells up when it gets moisture. And we had a couple of goats that, along the way, over the years, that would actually bloat and they would die. And we had so much stuff in their stomach. They would fill up and then there's nothing we could do for them. We couldn't save them. Anyways, I think our brains get like that with information. We live in the information age, but we kind of live in the information overload age. If you think about it, there's just so much. There's too much. And it makes it hard for us to go through and pick and choose and say, I don't need that. It's good, but it's not relevant to me right now. So I'm going to say no to that, and I'm going to say yes to this because this is relevant to me right now. But aside from all that, even the relevant stuff, our brains are not designed to hold information for long periods of time. There might be some people that have a natural gift for memorizing things, and that's great. That's great. But that still doesn't change the fact that your brain is supposed to be an idea factory. Your brain is supposed to generate thoughts, supposed to solve problems, supposed to create new ideas and ways of helping people or changing systems or improving the world around you in different ways. That's what your brain's going to be good at if you let it. And the way that you don't get good at it is you bog it down with so much other information because you're trying to remember everything because you won't write it down. So when you're doing your goals, just write them down. If you use this system, great. If you don't, use another system that works for you. But the principle is write your stuff down. You've got to write it down. You've got to get the plan from here out on paper. Now, a third, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but this is a little bonus, but when you do get your stuff written down on paper, it gives you the opportunity to look at it from a new perspective. Now it's out, it's articulated, it's in front of you, and it's on paper. And as such, you can look at it with a fresh set of eyes, and you can say, okay, now this is like I just gave birth to something. Here it is in front of me. Now I can look at it, analyze it, and say, is this actually as good as I thought it was? Because I think there's this little fantasy world that inside of our heads where things sometimes are better than actually they really are, or we think they are. They seem better, or even worse. It's a hard to gauge when it's inside of our heads. But when we get it out on paper, we look at it, we are able to actually step back. It's almost like a third-person point of view, even though we're still the same person. By getting it on paper, we remove ourselves one step from that idea. Then we're able to look at it and say, is this good? Is this right? Am I on track? Etc. We can ask ourselves questions, and then we can respond accordingly, and we can change that plan in the writing as it needs to be done to be better or improved or different to better match what we're trying to accomplish. So if you take your goals and you have them in here, they kind of all mix around with other ideas, and it's hard to say these are my goals. It's hard to separate them into different categories of thought inside our heads. Right here, well, there they are. Here's my plan for the day. My plan's on this side. Daily to-do list, right there. So here's my plan for the day. This is what I am doing with my time today. Once I have it written, I look down and I go, nah. Or I go, what? What was I thinking? Scratch, change, right? So write your stuff down. There's 3 good reasons to write your plan down. Don't rely on your head. I guess a fourth could be your brain forgets. I mean, you may have photographic memory, like I said, but you're still going to forget things. I think most of us have a tendency to forget things. I know I have. You rely on your brain to remember something, you're taking a risk. You really are. And once you've forgotten a really great idea that you once had, and you're like, oh, what was it? And you're banging your head trying to remember. That should be lesson enough for you to go, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want to risk losing another great idea or great thought that I had. So write your stuff down, get it on paper, get in that habit of staying organized, create a system. This is a great system, but create a system for you to write stuff down and keep it down. And you can always go back to it, but at least it's out of your head. It's written down. You're comfortable knowing you haven't lost it. You're never going to lose it. Paper doesn't forget. And then you can move on to other things like solving problems, creating solutions, and making the world a better place.